Imagine you check your $401,000. You've got $200,000 sitting there. Not bad. It's in a Vanguard S&P 500 index fund. You own tiny pieces of Apple, Microsoft, ExxonMobil. You're diversified. You're smart. But here's what they don't tell you. When Apple holds a shareholder vote, you don't get to vote. When ExxonMobil picks its board, you have no say. Someone else is voting your shares. Who? Blackrock. They control $10 trillion in assets. $10 trillion. They're the largest shareholder in almost every major American corporation. Your money, their votes, their power. Welcome to the invisible empire that runs capitalism from the shadows. Today, we're exposing how one firm became more powerful than most governments without you ever hearing about it. To understand how one firm got this powerful, go back to 1988. Larry Fink had just lost $100 million at Blackstone on a mortgage bet that went sideways. Career killer. Most guys would have disappeared. Fink had a different idea. What if you could use computers to see risk before it explodes? What if you built a system that could predict disaster in ways human traders never could? So he started Blackrock with a pitch that sounded almost boring. We'll manage institutional money. We'll use technology. We'll never lose you $100 million because we forgot to hedge. The timing was perfect. This was the era of the index fund revolution. John Bogle at Vanguard had already democratized investing with a radical idea. Stop paying some guy in a suit to pick stocks and usually lose. Just buy everything in the market and hold it. Cheap, simple, it worked. BlackRock took that concept and scaled it for the big money. Pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, insurance companies managing billions, not millions. And they had a secret weapon, Aladdin, a risk management platform that still runs the world today. By the early 1990s, BlackRock was managing $17 billion. By the 2000s, hundreds of billions. Then 2008 hit. The global financial crisis, the moment everything changed. When Lehman Brothers collapsed and the system started imploding, who did the government call? Not Goldman, not JP Morgan, BlackRock. The Treasury Department hired them to value the toxic assets nobody else could price. The Federal Reserve hired them to clean up Bear Stearns and AIG. BlackRock became the crisis manager for the crisis managers. And here's the kicker. They got paid, sure, but the real prize was legitimacy. After 2008, BlackRock wasn't just another asset manager. They were the trusted adults, the ones governments turned to when everything went to hell. That reputation was worth more than any consulting fee. Money poured in. Pension funds, insurance companies, sovereign wealth funds lined up. By 2015, BlackRock hit $5 trillion. By 2020, $8 trillion. Today, over $10 trillion. That's more than every country's GDP except the US and China. So BlackRock became the trusted name, the firm you called when serious people needed serious money managed. But there was a problem lurking in the math, and it wasn't the technology. It was what happens when all that money flows to one place. Here's the secret most investors don't understand. When you buy stock through an index fund, you don't vote. BlackRock votes for you. It's called proxy voting, the legal mechanism that makes the whole system work. You buy shares of an S&P 500 index fund. You own the economic interest. Stock goes up, you profit. Stock goes down, you lose. But the governance rights, the actual power to vote on who runs the company and how, that belongs to BlackRock, and they use it everywhere. In 2019, there was a brutal fight at ExxonMobil. Activist investors wanted the board to take climate change seriously, to pivot away from fossil fuels faster. The board resisted. It came down to a shareholder vote. BlackRock controlled enough shares to decide the outcome. They voted with management, the activists lost. Same story at Disney, same at United Airlines, same at Chevron. BlackRock's votes decided the outcome because they controlled the largest block. Not because they're geniuses, because they're holding your money. Scale this up. BlackRock votes at over 9,000 shareholder meetings every single year. Think about that number. 9,000 companies, thousands of board elections, thousands of executive pay packages, thousands of corporate policy decisions. Who's making these calls? A stewardship team of about 50 people in a Manhattan office. 50 people voting trillions of dollars. Let that sink in. You saved for 30 years. You maxed out your 401k every paycheck. You diversified. You played by the rules. And when it comes time to actually exercise the power that ownership is supposed to give you, 50 strangers you've never met are making the decisions. Your retirement money. Their political priorities. Most investors have no idea this is happening. They watch the account balance go up and down and think that's all there is. They don't know someone else is voting their shares to reshape corporate America. Okay, so they control the votes, but surely they vote in your best interest, right? They're fiduciaries. They're legally required to act for you. Well, fiduciary duty sounds great on paper. Reality is messier. BlackRock owns Delta, United, American, and Southwest. Largest shareholder in all four. So when these airlines get together and lobby Congress to kill consumer protections, to eliminate mandatory refunds, to shrink seat sizes, who wins? The airlines. Higher fees, fewer rights, fatter margins. But you're not just a shareholder, you're also a passenger. You're getting squeezed from both directions. BlackRock has zero incentive to make Delta crush United in competition. They own both. They want the entire industry profitable, even if it means less competition and higher prices for you. It's the same pattern everywhere. Banking. BlackRock owns JP Morgan, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Citi. Pharma. Pfizer, Merck, Johnson & Johnson, AbbVie. Tech. Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon. Energy. ExxonMobil, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, Shell. When you own everyone in an industry, you stop caring about competition. You care about industry-wide profit margins. Economists have studied this. They call it common ownership, and the effects are measurable. One study found airline prices are 3 to 7% higher because of common ownership by BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. Another looked at banking fees. Same story. Hospital consolidation accelerated in markets where the big three owned all the competing hospitals. This is the con. They talk about maximizing shareholder value. What they mean is maximizing industry-wide profits, even when you pay more as a consumer. Because you're not just a shareholder. You fly on those planes. You bank at those banks. You take those drugs. It's like owning every team in a league and betting on higher ticket prices instead of better games. Sure, the league makes more money, but the fans get screwed. And guess what? You're the fan. Your money. Their priorities. Ghost ownership. You'd think regulators would step in. This looks a lot like an antitrust violation. Standard Oil got broken up for less. But here's where the story gets darker. Why haven't regulators stopped this? Because BlackRock is the regulator. The revolving door between BlackRock and the government isn't a door anymore. It's a superhighway with no speed limit. Brian Deese, BlackRock's global head of sustainable investing, became Biden's director of the National Economic Council. Adewale Adeyemo, a BlackRock executive, became Deputy Treasury Secretary. Michael Pyle, BlackRock's global chief investment strategist, became Kamala Harris's chief economic advisor. It goes both ways. Former Treasury officials go to BlackRock, former Fed staff go to BlackRock. They rotate back when the next crisis hits. Then they leave again when the TV cameras turn off. 2018. When the financial system collapsed, the Treasury hired BlackRock to value the toxic mortgage assets nobody else could price. BlackRock got paid fat consulting fees to advise on the bailout. At the same time, BlackRock was buying distressed assets for its own clients at fire sale prices. Conflict of interest? Nobody asked. 2020. COVID hits. The Federal Reserve needs someone to manage its emergency bond buying program. Who do they call? BlackRock. The Fed handed them the keys to a multi-trillion-dollar market intervention. BlackRock got to decide which corporate bonds to buy with taxpayer money. They were advising the Fed while managing funds that directly benefited from those exact purchases. And it's not just America. The European Central Bank consults BlackRock. The Bank of Canada uses Aladdin. Governments worldwide treat BlackRock as the expert for financial crisis management. BlackRock donates to both parties. They're not ideological, they're practical. They want access. They get it. Here's the kicker. They're too big to regulate because they are the regulatory apparatus. The watchdog became the wolf. How do you write rules to constrain the company sitting in the room helping you write the rules? You can't. That's the point. But surely they're at least transparent about this power, right? Actually, transparency is their genius. They don't hide the influence. They rebrand it as virtue. Enter ESG, environmental, social, governance. Sounds wonderful, doesn't it? Who opposes the environment? Who's against social responsibility? Who wants bad governance? It's a Trojan horse wrapped in moral language. Starting in the late 2000s, BlackRock CEO Larry Fink began writing annual letters to corporate America. Not suggestions, ultimatums. He told CEOs that if they didn't adopt ESG policies, didn't hit diversity targets, didn't pledge net zero carbon, BlackRock would vote them out. BlackRock would replace their boards. This wasn't advice. It was a threat backed by $10 trillion in voting power. Companies got the message fast. ExxonMobil appointed climate activists to its board. Banks started blacklisting coal companies for loans. Disney restructured executive compensation to include ESG metrics. Not because shareholders demanded it, because BlackRock demanded it. But here's the question nobody wants to ask. Who elected BlackRock to set social policy for the entire economy? You didn't vote for Larry Fink. Congress didn't confirm him. He answers to nobody except shareholders. And even they don't get a real say because of the proxy voting trap we already covered. This is what they call stakeholder capitalism. It sounds progressive. It means corporations serve all stakeholders, not just shareholders. Employees, communities, the planet. Noble. Except who decides what that means in practice? BlackRock decides. Unelected governance. And here's the beautiful irony. Both sides hate it. Conservatives in Texas, Florida, West Virginia pulled billions in pension funds from BlackRock, calling ESG a woke political agenda. Meanwhile, progressives are furious because ESG is mostly theater. Companies make pledges, check diversity boxes, and nothing fundamentally changes. It's greenwashing with a corporate logo. Whether you love ESG goals or despise them, the mechanism is the problem. One firm with $10 trillion sets social policy for the global economy without democratic accountability. That's not capitalism. That's not democracy. It's technocracy in a moral costume. So where are we now? It's 2025. BlackRock manages more money than any institution except governments. What's the current reality? Here we are, late 2025. BlackRock sits on over $10 trillion in assets under management, the largest pool of privately controlled capital in human history. And the Aladdin system that powers BlackRock's risk engine? Competitors use it too. Vanguard uses it, State Street uses it. Half the asset management industry runs on BlackRock's software platform. The reach extends far beyond the ownership percentages. But there's resistance. Over 20 states, mostly red states like Texas, Florida, and West Virginia, have passed laws restricting pension funds from using firms with ESG criteria. They've pulled billions out of BlackRock. It made headlines. Larry Fink himself backpedaled. The aggressive ESG letters softened. He's retreating, at least in public. The European Union is discussing regulations to cap passive ownership concentration. The UK is considering similar measures. Some large pension funds are diversifying away from the big three. There's regulatory noise about breaking up the power structure, but the structural reality hasn't budged. Index funds remain the best investment vehicle for most people. Low fees, broad diversification, consistent long-term returns. That's still true. So money keeps flowing in. BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street keep growing. Here's the trap for ordinary investors. If you want to exit this system, you give up the core benefits of diversification. You could do direct indexing, where you personally own the shares and vote them yourself. But it's expensive, it's complex, it requires significant capital and active oversight. Most financial advisors won't even offer it under $500,000. For the average person with a 401k, a teacher with a pension, a nurse saving for retirement, you're stuck. You can complain, you can be aware of how the system works, but you're playing a game where the house wrote the rules, operates the casino, and also runs the regulatory commission across the street. So what's the lesson? What should you actually understand? Here's what matters. Passive investing was supposed to democratize wealth. It did. But it also concentrated governance power in ways nobody saw coming. Innovation plus scale equals unintended consequences. Your retirement savings are hostage to someone else's agenda. That's the reality. You own the economic upside, but you surrendered the control. And most people don't even know it happened. This isn't left versus right. It's democracy versus technocracy. When 50 people in Manhattan can vote trillions of dollars and shape policy across the entire economy, that's a structural defect regardless of your politics. What can you actually do? Be aware. Understand proxy voting. Push for reforms that restore individual voting rights in index funds. Support regulatory efforts to limit passive ownership concentration. Demand your pension fund or 401k provider give you voting control. It's not glamorous work, but it's real. The bigger lesson is timeless. Anytime power concentrates this severely, we should worry. It doesn't matter if current leadership is benevolent. Structures outlast individuals. The problem isn't Larry Fink as a person. The problem is one firm or three firms wielding this much influence over the entire economy without accountability. The $10 trillion secret is simple. Modern capitalism has kings again. We just renamed them asset managers. But we've been here before. We broke up Standard Oil when Rockefeller controlled too much. We broke up AT&T when Ma Bell owned telecommunications. We can address concentrated power when we recognize it exists. The first step is seeing it clearly. Thanks for watching. If you want to understand how tech giants manipulate what you see online through algorithmic control, our next video breaks it down. See you there.